Chapter 24. The Light. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, Let there be light, and there was light. Fix thy soul gaze upon the stars, whose ray thou art, the flaming star that shines within the lightless depths of ever-being, the boundless fields of the unknown. From the Voice of Silence, Blavatsky. In the Voice of Silence we read of 4 periods called modes of truth, through which the candidate for discipleship must pass ere his feet can be truly planted upon the path. Until he awakens to the desirability of the spiritual life and has heard the voice of the divine in his heart, the candidate is passing through the first period, called in the Hindu Ku, or the assembling of misery or walking in darkness. When his gaze is turned toward the star of initiation, he calls down upon himself more rapidly his past karma. This period is called Tu, or the assembling of temptation. In the third period, he meets and conquers all temptation and wipes out all old karmic debt, which period is called Mu, the destruction of temptation. And only in the fourth period, called Tao, does he consciously enter upon the path. Just as the candidate requires 4 periods of creation through which he must pass ere he can create for himself a new life and a new world, his path, so in the creation of the planet there are 4 days or periods in which there is a completion of mere earthly conditions, the path of the planet, preparatory to the real purpose of evolution, which is to prepare a field or the path for the continued evolution of mankind. The first creation is that of light, symbolizing the light of the Christos, which breaks into the darkness of man's ignorance and sin and turns his attention toward a higher life. This light perceived in his heart is called the star of initiation, because the first glimpse of its glory initiates him into a new world, and the memory of that flash leaves him no peace until he seeks its source. This light shines in the darkness of the unawakened soul, and the darkness comprehended not. It moves like the Spirit of God over the face of the restless water of humanity, and awakens to life to which is latent therein. The darkness is pregnant with the potencies of all things, both good and evil, which at the breaking forth of the light becomes energized with new life, and begin their slow evolution toward perfection. As with the earth when God said, Let there be light, so with the candidate. The instant he perceives the light of the Christ within, every hidden thing within him is energized and awakened to activity, for only by this fermentation can the evil be transmuted and evolve into good. In the second period is created a firmament, and the waters are separated from the waters. In the life of the candidate, this period is passed in learning to separate his higher from his lower nature, in learning to separate the desires, symbolized by water or illusion, which drag him down from those which tend toward the higher life. By this separation he creates for himself a positive ideal toward which to strive, heaven, and recognizes the overshadowing of his higher self, the firmament. The acquired meaning of the word firmament is to make firm, the true meaning being an expanse or the circle within which a definite creation takes place. In the second period, the candidate creates for himself a definite circle or defines the limits of his spiritual aura within, which must evolve his spiritual body, just as the earth evolves within its firmament or the limits of its auric zone. In the third period, the dry land, the seas and all vegetation producing seed after its kind is created. In the candidate, this is the period in which he brings forth and conquers his lower nature. He here gains the power of standing on a firm foundation, the dry land, and separating from this all that is illusory, the sea. He deliberately plants, and by the power of the divine will brings forth such seeds as he chooses. Only when this is accomplished to a greater or lesser degree can he really enter the path itself. Only when he has grasped enough of the philosophy of the workings of the divine law to give him a reason for the faith that is within him, a reason that cannot be shaken by doubts or sophistries, can he have a firm foundation upon which to stand. Each pupil is passing through one of these periods of creation, but only when he has reached the fourth has he really created the path. In ancient temples, the sacred shrine was approached by 7 steps, the fourth of which was a broad terrace upon which most of the ceremonies took place. Only the few initiated priests and priestesses were permitted to ascend the higher steps, for the 4th step symbolized the path, and only those who had conquered the steps of approach and had created the path could go higher. Some of you have reached this 4th step or period, while most of you are struggling upon one of the 3 lower, still assembling the various trials and temptations which must be met and conquered ere the path is entered. The trials that come to you are more than mere tests. When the God said, "Let there be light," the light began to penetrate into the darkness, the cast-off matter of a previous world period, all that had not been transmuted into good. This is the outer darkness into which the unprofitable servant is cast, which simply means that all the matter which should be the servant of the Lord, the Christ, but which fails to respond during one period of manifestation, must pass through a period of outer darkness or lie in the grave until the resurrection of the dawn of the next Manvatara. In many respects, the darkness might be compared to a compost heap into which all refuse, effete, and unusable matter is cast, there to ferment in darkness until the next springtime, when it can be spread upon the earth and its life force, transmuted by the power of the elements, can be utilized to bring forth flowers. This accumulated mass is darkness because it is composed of dead matter, incapable of reflecting light. In the same way, the candidate in his past lives has left a trail of darkness composed of effete emanations which he has failed to redeem. This is often poetically alluded to as the trail of the serpent. In the voice of the silence, it is the shadow of thyself outside the path, cast in the darkness of thy sins. Like the darkness of chaos, it is pregnant with the germs of that which must ultimately come into light and be redeemed by its Creator, that is, be transmuted into force that shall bring forth life more abundantly. It was only in the fourth day that the path of the earth's evolution was really entered upon, that is, when the greater and lesser lights, the stars, the days and nights, the times and seasons were created. Only when this period was reached was the earth ready for the evolution brought over from a past world period to continue. The loathsome, creeping things of the darkness were not created by the light, but were all in the darkness simply awaiting the energizing force of the light to quicken them. The light was sent into the darkness not to stir up evil, but by the omniscient law, which recognizes that only by fulfilling its destiny can evil be transmuted into good. The evil weeds must grow, be uprooted, die, and give their life force back to the soil, ere their power can manifest as food for man. So with the candidate, he must penetrate the darkest depth of his being, and not deny, but face and recognize all he finds therein, then he can conquer. This he does through the divine power of the Christ when he said, "Let there be light." There is then created in him two great lights, the masculine form of the sun and the feminine force of the moon, the greater to rule the day, the lesser the night. The sun force is the masculine quality of reason which gives him light, courage, and power to grapple with the temptation and problems of his everyday life, while the moon force, lesser only that it has less apparent, is the intuition which will illumine the darkest night and give him the power to understand the forces of his inner nature. The instant the star of initiation sends down this twofold ray into the darkness of his earth heart, every creeping thing, not only in his heart, but also in his environment, comes forth. The instant he speaks the word, all this darkness filled with thought currents of evil, powerful, malignant, deadly beyond description, but heretofore inert, asleep, quiescent, will be stirred into life, in this way precipitating his karma upon him. In the creation of the earth it was the assembled gods, the Elohim, who spake the word, "Let there be light," and the chaotic mass out of which the new world was to evolve began its evolution. It was the offscoring, that which they themselves had left behind when they reached godhood in previous world periods, and consequently it was their own creation and theirs to redeem. So with the candidate, the darkness, the evil, the temptations that assail him are his own. He has created them in ages past, and when he comes to this conscious step where, of his own free will, he determines to create his immortal body, all this leftover material must be purified and redeemed, for only out of it can he build his immortal habitation. Try to think of a God consciousness so comprehending this law, and so recognizing the needs of the creatures of the darkness, and so filled with the determination to bring good out of evil that, in speaking the word, the full comprehension of all the steps of the evolution of the chaotic darkness, with the attendant suffering and misery through which it must pass as a result of the purifying process, was fully grasped. Moreover, having the consciousness that the light he was sending into the darkness was his very self, his consciousness, his soul substance, and that all the sins and suffering that man would pass through on the road to redemption would be his own, that every pang must be suffered with a godlike power to understand its keenest bitterness, still in divine compassion, seeing the end from the beginning, would nevertheless speak the word unfalteringly, and in speaking it take upon himself the whole burden of the transmutation of the evil into good. This is the true meaning of redemption through love. For the world was not redeemed by the crucifixion of one man, however much that man manifested the Christ, and however much of the darkness was redeemed thereby. It is by the daily and hourly crucifixion of the conscious power of the Godhead, the Christ in matter, the living in the darkness and suffering with until, atom by atom, the whole is transmuted by his life force, the symbolic blood, that the redemption of the world is accomplished. Every earnest soul who recognizes this principle and takes upon himself the redemption of his own creations thus becomes a redeemer to that extent, and releases the Christ from the cross through the crucifixion of his own personality. Do not think of the Christ as an impersonal force, a mere law of action, but as the full consciousness of the Godhead, which is literally wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes are we healed. For in him, the Christ, dwelleth all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. Some conception of this divine sacrifice must penetrate the conscience of every sincere follower of the light, and in a lesser sense he must have the same willingness to suffer and endure with and through his creations, and for the same reason, that is, that divine compassion, which would not that any perish, but all have eternal life. This is an effort to make your finite minds grasp an infinite reality, but at least a faint conception of this infinite love and compassion and yearning to create and redeem must be grasped ere the candidate can hope to set foot upon the path. For this thought is the illumination given by the star of initiation, or the light shining in the darkness. Only the light of this star or this divine love can give him strength to brave the lions in the way. The vision of the light may be but a fleeting glimpse, but it will awaken within him a response that will forever urge him on until victory is attained. If you carry this lesson into your own lives, you will see why so many undreamed of trials and temptations are the first result of your determination to lead a spiritual life. The more powerful the light, the more earnestly you determine to lay every corner of your life open to it, the more you let the light shine out into the darkness of surrounding conditions, the more will the germs of unsuspected traits and temptations awaken to life and assail you, and evil conditions surround you, conditions of sickness, poverty, lack of love and appreciation, and many other adverse things. These conditions do not come to you to hurt you, nor are they sent by any great being who desires to see you squirm, as a scientist might impale a beetle on a pin or cut off a frog's heart to see how long it would beat. But they come to you, their Creator, to be redeemed because they were latent in your personality, and the first beams of the Christ star penetrating the darkness awaken them to life. They are not sent to see you prove your strength by conquering them, although you grow stronger with everything you conquer, but they are the denizens of your deep, creatures of your own past evil thoughts, the devils which behold the Christ, the light, and tremble. The word tremble is not used here with the idea of fear, but with the idea of quivering with the vibration of a new life, as it imparts a higher rate of vibration to the latent substance of evil. Hence, a recognition of this fact and a determination to redeem all by the power of the Christ will transmute it into good. Therefore, do not be surprised if things assail you more than formerly. Do not expect that seeking for spiritual wisdom will make life easier, will mean that all your trials are over. Do not seek the Christ life for the purpose of making your pathway in life smooth, your body free from disease, or your environment free from inharmony and trial. For if you seek it for this purpose, know well that you have not really spoken the creative word and must reap bitter disappointment. These things must come, and if you are strong and determined and earnest and fearless and keep on crying, "Let there be light," you will have the power of the light to pass this step. For this step is the destruction or transmutation of all temptations into the strength necessary to enter consciously into the path. Take courage. Never say, "I cannot," for by the power of the Christ within, you can. There is nothing in yourself or your environment that you cannot transmute into good, for all constitute the worldly goods given you by your Father in heaven, out of which you must create your immortal habitation. Whatsoever you put behind you and say you cannot conquer today must pass into the utter darkness, outer in that it is out of your present life, there to remain until you are strong enough once more to take it up and redeem it. Your loving Father will help you. In tenderest pity he sees your struggle and your despair. But if you give up and cry, I cannot, then in mercy you are lifted out of the path, and another night's sleep is given you in which to gather strength. You must await the light of another day. For know well that you must come again and take up the task again and again until all is redeemed. It is often remarked that many reach a certain point of development and then apparently fall back. This means that they have failed in some important tasks and are awaiting the coming of a new day period. But the enemies he slew in the last battle will not return to life in the next birth that will be his. Fear not, go forward, even though the darkness be full of life. If thou wouldst not be slain by them, then must thou harmless make their own creations, the children of thy thought, unseen, impalpable, that swarm around humankind, the progeny and heirs to man and his terrestrial spoils. But if thou fix thy soul's gaze upon the stars whose ray thou art, it will lead thee into the path. Be not discouraged, for you are able and strong. You shall come forth victorious, but ask not that one drop of bitterness pass until all is transmuted, until you have drained the cup, and in its dregs have found the jewel of great price, for which a man will sell all that he hath to possess. Keep on crying, let there be light, create and redeem, for thereby shall you pass through the 5th and 6th periods, and shall come to the 7th, when ye shall rest from your labors, and the God within shall see his creations and pronounce them good. Just as this is true of each individual, so it is true of this movement, and as a movement it must pass through the same periods or stages. The trumpet blast has gone forth, let there be light, and all the hosts of evil are stirring into activity at the sound. The movement must be created by the united effort of every candidate, for each is individually responsible for its success. Wherefore take upon to you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. And above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked.